McMahon, for our little YouTube short this week, you had a really good idea. I'm going to let you tell us what it is.
So we're going to discuss stars, or in some cases, dudes who consider themselves to be stars, who will be sitting on the couch come playoff time and could be on the move this summer. And this was inspired in large part by the little Julius Randle, what do we want to call this? Melodrama, whatever you want to call it, in New York, where
they're actively booing him. He's getting booed at the Garden now on the reg.
I believe it was a radio station up there, Bontemps, correct me if I'm wrong, who reported that Randle basically asked out, which is like, this is a very strange time to do that. The trade deadline was over a month ago. Yeah. So I don't know about the post game ask out, but look, whatever the case is, it's clear that Julius Randle ain't happy. The Knicks aren't happy with him. The fans certainly aren't happy with him. Now, the other problem with making a trade demand is you have to have trade value, I think, to reasonably demand a trade. I'm not sure that he does this early in a $117 million contract extension. That is not looking.
You know what? He's not a bad contract. You know, the contract
if he played like last year.
Well, he'd be a great contract. You know, I think he ranks like Fred Katz from The Athletic. I was at the Knicks game the other night, and he told me, so I want to give him credit. I think he looked it up. He's like 48th or 49th highest paid player in the league. So for a guy who was all NBA last year, that's not a bad contract. It's just that he's played so poorly this year. The value isn't where you want it.
He's never come back. He's never come back from when he went after the fans in the wintertime. I think in December, like that. Yeah. That whole, it just, the season has obviously not gone the way the Knicks hoped it would. He obviously had a magical year last year, as did they. It hasn't gone the same way this year. And just, it's just been off from the start. And like you said, the vibes here with him have never recovered from that moment. And he's never really, to be fair to the fans, he's never really tried that hard to recover him either. Like he hasn't really, he's given half-hearted efforts here and there, but he hasn't really tried any kind of true mea culpa. So
I think Kat can relate to the Julius Randle relationship with Tibbs. I'll put it that way. It's not going real well.
What'll be interesting is that, so obviously the Knicks are run by former agents of CAA. That's what Leon Rose and Wes Wesley were, agents with CAA. Julius Randle is represented by CAA. He was already there when wasn't like they acquired him. He was already there, but they gave him the contract extension, which I thought was a good contract at the time. They got a guy who was on the all NBA team for well below the max. It was a good signing. We'll see if a player, like CAA approaches Leon and says, hey, he wants out of here. Here's where we lean on you, team president. We're leaning on you to, so you knew that was eventually going to happen. Eventually the purposes of the Knicks and the purposes of CA were going to cross. But here we have the first time it actually is. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I think the better question is, where is he going to, like, where's the market going to be for Julius Randle? I think is the better question than if they lean on him to move, like where is the team that is looking to acquire him?
I mean, would it be, can you get value for him, or would it have to be a salary dump?
Well, that's what I mean. That's the thing. Like he's a talented player, but I'm not sure, as a power forward who, is more likely to shoot closer to 30% than 40%
and needs the ball in his hands.
It's a tricky fit. To find teams that make sense for him. So, he's a good player. I'm not saying there won't be any interest in him at all. I'm not saying that, but it's not the cleanest fit to try to find a spot for him. That's what I'm curious about. Even if both sides decide, hey, maybe it is best to look for a deal, you're gonna have to find one that makes sense. And I don't really see an obvious one off the top of my head that's like Julius Randle would be a great fit with X team.
All right, who's else is on the list, McMahon?
Bradley Beal. He is given, he's always been pretty firm in his desire to remain in Washington. I would describe some of his recent comments as is waffling fair, is at least cracking the window toward perhaps seeing what's out there. Is that fair? I think, he basically acknowledged that he's going to consider options at this point. And, if Bradley Beal would be available, I think he would be the most coveted. Well, I don't want to say that because there's certainly a younger star who could very well be on the market this summer, but Bradley Beal would be highly coveted.
Let me say two things about Bradley Beal. One is that he has in the past yo-yoed back and forth on his commitment when he talks to people, but nobody who I've talked to that's close to him believes he's going to leave. He may have moments where he entertains it, but people don't believe it. So I'll say that. So, so it wouldn't surprise me if we hear between now and July 1st that there's rumors that go both ways, where you hear, oh yeah, he's interested in leaving. And then you hear another rumor. No, he's rock solid, because he has done the same thing to tell people. The second thing I'll just point out is that while he is a free agent, he does have a player option in his contract. So if he did want to leave, he could just go to the Wizards and say, I'm going to opt into my contract, trade me to a certain place. So it wouldn't have to be a team that just has cap space to go get him. That's just more of an FYI as opposed to what I think could happen.
The other thing here, and I don't think this matters as far as the Wizards thinking, but I talked to a lot of people around the league who are like, the Wizards should be shopping him. Like, do you want to chase an 8 seed? Do you want to chase a play-in every year? Or is it best just to blow it up, get a haul for Beal and move on? But that's neither here nor there in terms of the reality of what they're actually thinking. Bontemps?
Yeah, I certainly think that's been the ongoing discussion about Bradley Beal for 3 or 4 years now, right?
Yeah.
Should the Wizards trade Bradley Beal really since the moment John Wall left? Like, it was kind of like, all right, is Bradley Beal going to get traded or not? And
last summer, Westbrook was sort of sitting there looking at him going, are you going to ask to be traded? Right. And Beal was like, nah. And then Westbrook was like, okay, I got to go to the Lakers.
Russ is like, I'm really good at this. This is the third straight year I've done it.
Well, and as we've talked about before, Ted Leonsis, the guy who owns the Wizards, he's had the same guys with the Capitals for decades, Alex Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom. And, I don't think he is really keen on trading Bradley Beal. My guess is he would prefer not to. But
he's going to have to pay him $200 million this summer otherwise. But they made that decision. They
paid John Wall, and my guess is if Brad wants to stay, they'll pay him. And, but it unlike Julius, who is it can be an awkward fit. Brad is the opposite of an awkward fit. Yeah. He's a guy that is one of the more portable stars in the league in terms of dropping him on different teams. With his skill set, he can fit just about anybody. And if he does become available this summer, or if he does decide to explore his options, you can bet there's going to be a bunch of teams looking at it, because, he's the kind of guy that, especially if he's your second or third best player, you're going to be feeling awfully good about yourselves.
Similar situation. Damien Lillard. Any chance do we think that either he pushes to finally leave Portland, which, he's been consistent, 10 toes on the ground in Portland, or that the Blazers, which we don't even know who's going to be the GM. We don't know if Joe Cronin's going to keep that job on a permanent basis or if they'll bring somebody else in. But any chance that the Blazers decide, well, it's been a heck of a run with Dame, but it's probably time for this organization to hit the reset button.
So the Blazers have pretty consistently said that they are going to have a general manager search. Having said that, people there believe that Joe Cronin will stay either in that job or in a high leadership position. Mm-hmm. The maneuvers that the Blazers have made indicate they're hoping for a real fast turn. That they're hoping to get the Pelicans lottery pick this year. They're going to have their lottery pick. They've been tanking their backsides off to try to get the best chances possible.
An epic. They are the tank Blazers for the rest of the season for sure.
They have their eye on a couple of wing players that they're hoping to trade for. I don't know if they'll get a couple, but I'm not going to get aggregated on who, but I mean,
because we're about to talk about Jeremy Grant. He was next on the list. So yes, you are going to.
There's other people on their list. But so I think their intention is, let's get 2 lottery picks. Let's get Dame healthy. Let's go out there and trade for another piece. And let's get right back on the horse. That does not sound like a team that's ready to trade Dame. Mm-hmm. And I assume that also includes Bontemps giving Dame the 2-year, $100 million, whatever extension this summer as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that if the extension doesn't come, then we'll see about the rest of it. But I would say that'll be the prerequisite. But yeah, I mean, the Blazers, every indication they've given is they want this to be a 1-year dip, right? Like Toronto last year, they dipped down to get a high pick, they bounce back up, and they make a run next year. Now
it helps to jump in the lottery. All those,
if you can get a Scotty Barnes,
that's right. That helps a lot. And look, if they get this Pelicans pick and they get their own pick and they get 2 top 10 picks, they have 2 young guys, and we'll see what happens. But
give Anthony Simons a giant contract this summer too.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in play. The Simons thing you mentioned, that is to me going to be a sneaky important moment for the Blazers, because I know everybody's enamored with Anthony Simons this year. I think that guy is destined to get a massive overpay this summer. I would not feel great.
He is destined to get paid a huge money. We'll see if it's an overpay.
I would not be thrilled if I'm paying him $80 million or somewhere in that range if he's going to be my starting shooting guard, which if you have Damien Lillard, that's what he's going to be. I think then they're signing up for a worse version of what they had before with CJ and Dame. I don't know. Their summer is going to be really interesting because they're going to be active. I think it seems likely. And the question is just in what direction are they active? So they're a team I'm really curious to see what happens with.
So let's talk about Jeremy Grant. Obviously Pistons aren't making the playoffs. There was a lot of discussion about him leading up to the deadline. We know that he considers himself to be a star. We know that he really likes being a 20 plus point per game scorer. That it seems like he would rather do that on a team that's not winning. Well, it doesn't seem like he had a choice. He fit really well with the Nuggets and left for the Pistons for the same money. The Blazers, there's been a lot of links there. Jeremy Grant, do we see him being moved this summer?
If you're going to trade for Jeremy, it's the same thing I'd say about James Harden. When you were looking to trade for James Harden, you were trading for James Harden, the player, and the guy who was also going to ask for the $250 million extension. If you're going to trade for Jeremy Grant, he wants an extension.
Yes.
I don't know how much you're going to give him. You can debate on that, but if you trade him and you're not committed to paying him a lot of money, it's not going to go well. So as you figure that, you got to compute that in as well. His name was rumored around the trade deadline. I never got the impression that anything ever got serious there. So keep that in mind as you think about Detroit's operation.
Well, look, the other thing you got to factor in there too is Jeremy Grant has made it very clear that Jeremy Grant wants to do Jeremy Grant things. Like he wants to get in his bag and score points and have the ball and have a huge role. Like say what you want. Like he got offered basically the same money from Denver and left to go to Detroit to have the ball. And it seemed to be made clear this year that if he got traded somewhere, the expectation was he was going to go somewhere and have the ball. And I don't know if I want Jeremy Grant to have the ball that much if I'm trading for him, because in theory, I'm trading for him to do what he was doing in Denver, where he was sort of in the Aaron Gordon role. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look at what Aaron, if he's in the Aaron Gordon role in Denver, which is what he was in before he got traded. I like that version of Jeremy Grant on a really good team. If Jeremy Grant's scoring 20 plus points a game for me, I'm not sure that team is going to be a lot better than Detroit. So, that I think has to be something that you factor in if you're one of these teams, is not only are you going to have to pay this guy a lot of money, but he's made it pretty clear. And Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but he seems to have made it pretty clear he wants to be a featured guy wherever he goes. And
he wants to be paid. He wants to be paid.
Right.
Too.
And it's a lot. That's a lot to sign up for if you're trading assets for a guy.
But I will say, all that you said, I don't dispute any of it. He's a guy who can guard on the wing and can score. He's a type of player that you really want if you're a competitive team. Players like this are in demand. He's still young. He's had sort of a sideways season with injuries this year, but they're not like, Detroit is quasi tanking. It's a type of, there's a lot of demand for him. It's just fitting the team and his personal demands are going to be.
It's fascinating. He's exactly the kind of guy any contender is looking for sure.
Would you rather have him or Miles Bridges?
I would rather have Miles Bridges.
I would too.
Yeah,
And
but Miles Bridges is restricted free agent, and the Hornets have a match offer. So, it's funny that you say that because
let's keep an eye on that one.
Well, what you're basically saying is that you think the Pistons are going to go after Miles Bridges, and that is
or another. I just think given the Hornets cap situation and Bridges is going to get paid, I could see there being some sign and trade scenarios that come into play.
There is speculation that the Pistons are going to target Miles Bridges
Miles Bridges, Flint native, by the way, who went to Michigan State.
We can skip over Russell Westbrook and John Wall. I think they're either traded for each other or perhaps buyout situations on both. Last one I want to hit on, and they might not be sitting on the couch for the playoffs. The Hawks are going to have a chance to get in. But does anybody here think this Hawks roster doesn't have a pretty significant remodel?
Well, certainly got a chance to.
They're paying a ton of money for a team that's in 10th place.
Mm-hmm.
And they have more guys to pay.
And I don't get the sense that it's a real harmonious group. So, John Collins feels like he's been in trade rumors for a few years now. That's certainly one name to keep an eye on. I also
he's sort of in the Julius Randle camp, where like as a offense first four, he's a better shooter than Randle, but still those are kind of tricky fits to find a home for him.
I was watching these owners, the NFL owners meetings this week, and I love the coaches were just like openly admitting, we tried to trade our quarterback. But, we tried to trade him, but now we might keep him. Like everybody knows, it's like it's a worst kept secret in the league that the Hawks tried to trade John Collins, for Ben Simmons. Who knows who else? They haven't said it publicly, but everybody knows. I respect it if you say it publicly, but he knows. But I do think, again, we're talking about a versatile scoring forward. He doesn't defend like Jeremy Grant, but there are people who want players like that.
And he's a pick and roll finisher. So he's not a guy who necessarily needs to have the ball as an initiator. He is a hell of a pick and roll finisher who also is a pretty good 3-point shooter. Like he's a really good offensive player
and still very young. We talk to teams, the ability to get a guy that young and also under contract, they know what he's going to cost. That's valuable. We'll be talking about those guys more. Thank you for listening / watching the Hoop Collective. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts twice a week.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.